All right, welcome back everyone to the Biology EOC Review Lesson number 4. And in this particular video, I'll be covering a couple of standards which is listed up here. They're all interconnected, so that's why you see more standards right here. The first one we're going to talk about is about the difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. So you know that the cellular respiration is a process in which mitochondria burn the glucose and releases the energy out for our daily activities, and that's what we do in our cells all the time. So that gives us the energy to live, to think, to physically active, and all those energy come from the glucose, which is burnt in mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell. So there are two methods this respiration can happen. One is called aerobic, another one is called anaerobic. And from this word, as it indicates, aerobic is a respiration that is burning of sugar takes place in the presence of oxygen. That means we are breathing in enough oxygen and the body has enough oxygen to burn the sugar. So in that case, aerobic respiration can happen. You can see that aerobic oxygen is necessary. But sometimes, when the oxygen is not enough or not available, the cells undergo another type of respiration called anaerobic. And aerobic takes place in the mitochondria, which is in the powerhouse of the cell, but anaerobic does not require mitochondria, it just takes place in the cytoplasm. Now, when we compare the how much energy we are going to get from it, the large amount of ATP is made from aerobic and very small amount we get it from anaerobic. And aerobic respiration pretty much yield around 36 to 38 ATP molecule, but anaerobic gives maybe only 2 ATP molecule. And so in aerobic, the glucose is completely burned, so completely broken down into carbon dioxide and water. But in anaerobic, it's a very partial breakdown. The products which forms from the anaerobic respiration can be reused for some other purpose as well. And what you get here, the end products is carbon dioxide and water. And here we get carbon dioxide and lactic acid or alcohol. So that's the difference between aerobic and anaerobic. Remember, aerobic need oxygen, anaerobic do not need oxygen. And you can see the chemical equation for aerobic respiration. You can see the glucose combines with oxygen, that is the burning process, produce the water, which we pee out, and we breathe out carbon dioxide and produces 36 ATP molecule. Now, anaerobic is very interesting. You know, when we do the rigorous exercise, our muscles next day it hurts because of our cells undergo anaerobic respiration and produce lactic acid from glucose, and it produces 2 ATP. So this ATP helps the cell to survive, and they won't die. Alcoholic fermentation is another type, which happens in most of the time in prokaryotes and also in fungus like yeast, bread yeast, baker's yeast, whatever we call. And there, glucose is broken down into alcohol, which is ethyl alcohol. That's why they use it in for the beverage industry, manufacturing beer and wine. And also, it produces carbon dioxide and 2 ATP. So that's the difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Now we're going to move on to the classification system. You know, the organisms are classified in two ways. One is the traditional method of classification. You can see that. Another one is a modern method of classification. In modern method of classification, we use the evolutionary relationship. So we'll come back to that. And you can see the traditional relationship. So here the human is classified, which comes under the kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, and class Mammalia, order Primates, family Hominidae or hominids, and genus is Homo, and species is Homo sapiens. So that's how we got the scientific name Homo sapiens. And this is a traditional classification. So in traditional classification, we have pretty much the six kingdom classification, and we comes under the kingdom Animalia. And as you see here, this is a modern classification based on the evolution. So the way this diagram is called a cladogram. Cladogram is a diagram that shows the evolutionary relationship. As you can see, when we go up in this line, the evolution that happens from left to right. So this is the direction of evolution. So the traits that you see towards the left are called ancestral trait, and the traits that you see towards the right is called the derived trait. So in this case, you can see the vertebral column is placed right here. So that means the lancelet do not have vertebral column. It's an outgroup. And any organism that comes after this particular point, all of them have vertebral column. And let's take this amniotic egg. Amniotic egg is placed right here. That means all the organisms comes right after that. They share this particular trait, which is the amniotic egg. The next, I'm switching over to plant anatomy. So this is what the diagram that you see here is the anatomy of the leaf, and you can see that this is the leaf, and this part is cut out and observed under the microscope, and you can see that the both upper and lower part of the side of the leaf is protected by an epidermis. We have an upper epidermis and lower epidermis. And in the upper epidermis, right below the upper epidermis, you can see some cells which is barrel shaped and thick green in color that is called palisade cell. This is where photosynthesis happens. And right below, in the lower side, you can see some cells which is loosely arranged. We call them spongy cells. This also have chloroplast and undergo photosynthesis, but it has a lot of space between. And this is the space where the carbon dioxide and oxygen is diffuses in. Right on the lower side, you can see some holes. This is called the stoma. Stoma is guarded by the guard cells. You can see that now the pore is closed when the guard cells are together. When the guard cells are detached, the pore is open. Now I want you to introduce some of the main part right here, which we call as vein. If you look at some of the tissue right here, there are two types of tissue you can see. One is called the xylem, another one is called the phloem. The xylem transport the water to the plants, and phloem transport the minerals and the food away from the leaf. So those are two very important tissues. Xylem transport water and phloem transport the food. Next, I'm going to quickly talk to you about anatomy of the flower. And what you see here is a anatomy of a bisexual flower. A bisexual flower contains both the sexes, which is the female part, also the male part together in single flower. So you can, what you see right here in the middle, the whole thing is the female part, which we call the pistil. Pistil has an ovary, style, and stigma. And inside the ovary, you can see that there's ovules, which eventually turn into seeds, and the whole ovary turn into fruit. And this is the male part of the flower, which we call stamen. And if you look at the stamen at the tip of the stamen, you see the anther. Inside the anther, we see the mycosporangium, and that's what it produces the pollen grains. And that's the male part of the flower, and this is the female part. Now we have the part which is petals that helps to attract the insects, and sometimes it contains nectary that is also to attract the insects, which helps them eventually in pollination. Now we have the green structure right here called the sepals or calyx, and that protects the flower during the bud stage. Next time, switching over to one last thing, a lesson from ecology, which is called ecological succession. Ecological succession is the process in which the structure of a biological community changes over time or evolve over time. Let me give you an example here. There are two types of succession. One is called the primary succession, another one is called secondary succession. Imagine there's a barren land. There is nothing there but the rock. But do you think, oh, after thousands of years, the place is going to be the same way? No, it is not. That barren rock, excuse me, the place where you don't have anything but the rock, let's say after a volcanic flow and the volcano, the flow cooled down, what happens after that? Eventually, there's small algae and lichens and those type of organisms starts growing there. We call them pioneer community. And then eventually small other green plants starts appear. Then you can see some shrubs came in, then small trees came in, then large trees came in, and then it becomes a climax forest. So the whole entire process takes actually thousands of years, but eventually we get the climax forest. This whole entire process is called succession. If it happens, if it is happening from a barren rock, it is called primary succession. Second one is called secondary succession. Imagine here's a scenario. There's a forest fire in Dixie County, and then part of the forest has been destroyed. Do you think that area is going to remain like that forever? No. But you can see that there is still soil exist, but here there is no soil. It's a rock. It has to start from the soil. That's why it just takes too much time. But here we have soil exist, and then the area will grow back to the climax forest again. And this process is called secondary succession. Now, this one is a slow process. The whole organisms come back to life, or the whole area come back to the climax forest in a shorter period of time. And this is called secondary succession. And I hope this is helpful. And these questions for the review quiz 4 are actually from these lessons. So I hope please ask me any questions if you have in the classroom or email me. Thank you very much. I hope this is helpful.